I guess I'm back. I made a video a few days ago and I put it up. I didn't watch this video before I put it up because I wanted it to be as honest as possible. So I just made it and posted it and I watched it afterwards. I felt bad about some of the things I said in there because I wasn't quite clear enough and my mind jumps all over. Lately I'm just not very clear-headed. And I've been putting it off for so long that I just made it, posted it, and then watched it afterwards. I don't want to stumble anybody that's trying to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses now, so I'd like to clarify just a couple of points in there, and I'd like to apologize. I want to apologize for any language I use that might have been discomforting to anyone, and I just clarify a couple of things that I said. Now, when I said that I was looking at the Jehovah's Witness faith and I found all these things that were the truth, I didn't mean the Jehovah's Witness was the truth. Their religious beliefs, doctrines were the truth. I was simply saying that all the things I'd questioned as a child, all the things that I found wrong the years after that I studied, that didn't make any sense to me, were just BS. And now I had the proof and facts in front of me. I had hard evidence proving that they'd been lying all along. And when I finally got the courage and I went right back to the beginning and I started studying everything that they'd preached from day one, I realized that it was just terrible, terrible hypocrisy. And there's no truth in the Jehovah's Witness faith. So I don't want anybody to think I thought they were right. All the stuff that I was talking about the other day, I feel bad about just some of it. I wish I'd watched the video before I posted it, but I probably wouldn't have posted it then. This has taken me a long time to even put up my first video, and I've got so much help from all the people on here that I feel I owe it back if I could help anybody in any way. I don't see people much anymore since I've been like I am now. And the only people I've actually had any interaction with lately, besides the doctors and the nurses, have been the videos I've watched on here. And the chatting a little bit I've done more recently on the comment sections and stuff. And I thank everybody for that I've spoken with for all the information they've given me. Anyways, to get back to what I was trying to do with the beginning of all of this anyways, to pass along my story if it's helpful to anybody. I was saying that I called it the JW poster child, or Ex-JW poster child videos, because I didn't live up to my potential in the JW faith. And I haven't seen a lot of ex-witness videos that actually say that. But I finally heard somebody and I thought, yeah, I think we need to see more of ex-brothers and sisters that always felt that they weren't doing their best and might have got in a little trouble while they were growing up in the faith, and for ridiculous reasons, and how much damage it caused, after we left and went on with our lives. I was watching a program the other day. It was on TV. It was an old show from back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And there's these people up on stage with puppets. And they were doing this thing about bad touching for kids. It was just in some program on TV. And I started laughing. I thought, boy, with everything, with the pedophilia problems coming out and the witnesses that are there not believing it and stuff, I was thinking, boy, they could really use somebody from back then, back in the 90s that used to do those programs about bad touching to go visit all the congregations to wake these clowns up that, yeah, you can't keep covering for these pedophiles. And it's in every congregation, because from what I've been told, what I've read, I had a buddy phone me and he says, hey man, you wouldn't believe what I just learned. This is a few years ago, about the JWs and pedophiles. And I said, what'd you learn? And he said, I heard Interpol and Scotland Yard and most of the global law enforcement agencies have a nickname for the Jehovah Witnesses. And I said, what's the nickname? And he said, they call it pedophilia paradise. Apparently there's been a real boom since the internet showed up, and the word spread that, if you're a pedophile, you're pretty safe if you're a Jehovah Witness. And I remembered back to when I was a child, and we had this brother, so-called brother, in the congregation, and he was a strange kitten, really strange kitten. We'll call him Dave, Brother Dave. And Brother Dave was in his 40s or something when I first met him as a child, and he just looked like a pedophile. Today, if you saw him back then, what he looked like, it just screamed pedophile, his face. And he was married. He had a few daughters, and of differing ages. The youngest one was probably 5-6 years older than me when I first met him, and I would have been probably around 5 or 6 years old, 7 maybe, because I don't remember when I first was at the congregation. There's just so many people that it took a while before I actually ended up meeting this man, I guess, because I don't remember it until a few years after we'd been there. They lived in a neighboring community, and there's about a half a dozen communities that all used one centralized congregation in the middle there. And we went to the meetings and stuff. I guess this very sick individual liked prepubescent girls, and he molested all his daughters, I learned later, and messed these poor girls up. I always thought the one girl that I was closest to in age, she was very angry, and she was a bad witness because she wasn't strong in the faith. Well, she's a teenager, and she'd gone through hell, and I didn't know this at the time, and I understand today why she was so angry, and she acted out, and she wasn't strong in the faith. But this guy, his daughters got too old for him, so he started molesting other kids in the congregation. And I learned all of this later on. And one day he shows up at our house because of my little sister. And apparently he liked her, whatever, I guess found her attractive is what it would be. Sick pervert, right? And he starts coming over to our house buying expensive, extravagant gifts for my little sister. And my father and mother knew that this wasn't right. Like, this guy's in his 40s, and my sister's like 6-7 years old. But my father was a proper, good Jehovah Witness, and you don't say bad things about your brothers. You try and give them direction, la-di-da-di-da. And he would sit him in the front room every time he showed up with these expensive gifts for my sister, and try and tell him that, over and over, that, I can't let you do this. You can't be buying this stuff and giving it to my little girl, right? And you start reading scripture to him, give him coffee, food, whatever. And get him out of the house. Sometimes it take hours to do this, to get rid of this guy, right? And then finally, he goes to the elders and talks to them, and they do the same damn thing. Like, he's in good standing, and, he's just being nice and la-di-da-di-da, and they're protecting this pedophile. Back then, we didn't call them pedophiles. We didn't know any better. But this clown kept this going and going. Years go by. My sister, my grandfather dies, and we moved my sister back home with us. And she's probably around 11 years old or something, maybe 12. She's a couple of years older than me. And she isn't back for long, and she's been raised by my grandparents, who aren't Jehovah Witnesses, or were not Jehovah Witnesses. And she has a better idea of how the world works because she was raised in a large city, and she's seen a lot more than us, knows a lot more than us. She's a little older than us, my sister and I. And this pervert brother shows up at our house with a very expensive pen and pencil, gold-plated set for my little sister. And now that my older sister's there, she realizes, holy smokes, this is just creepy and wrong. And of course, we're ushered into the back living room. We had 2 living rooms in the house, the main one in the front, and then a new one that was put on the back of the house. We had a large house. And we're in the back, he's in the front, and my sister starts explaining to us that this guy's a pervert and he's a creep. You know, it's wrong that he's here. And we tell her that this has been going on for a few years now. And my sister doesn't understand. My father ended up losing it on her later that night about even discussing this pedophile or saying that stuff to us. You can't say bad things about, you know, fellow Jehovah's Witness brothers in good standing and la-di-da-di-da. Well, this guy, I don't know how many kids he had ended up molesting, but he'd had the protection of the Kingdom Hall the whole time he was doing this, you know. He molested a little girl, and this is after my little sister, or my big sister, had come home now to live with us. And he ended up molesting this little girl. She couldn't have been much more than a couple years old. It was, you know, terrible. And it's hard to quiet something like that, considering that the little girl was the granddaughter of one of the members that used to be you know, one of the top elders in the congregation when we first moved there. And he was very angry, and this caused problems for him and his children. All those families were Jehovah's Witness families. They were raised in the faith, and la-di-da-di-da. But once again, nothing happens. Mr. Dave, Brother Dave there, and his wife end up splitting up finally. You know, the kids are a mess. All the daughters are, you know, going through hell and having problems, and the sister, his wife, is had enough, and she ends up leaving him, and they divorce or whatever, and she now moves into the small little community we live in, and he moves into the community with the congregation. She meets a gentleman there, and he's an older guy, around her age, maybe a little older, but he's not a witness. He's a very nice man. He was always nice to me when I was a kid. Small community, right? And they end up forming a relationship, and she ends up getting disfellowshipped. We're not allowed to speak to her because she's a bad Jehovah's Witness, weak in the faith, and she's a fornicator, adulterer now. But, you know, right away she's disfellowshipped, and none of this makes sense. You know, you're a kid, like, what's going on here? This is a nice lady, and the guy that she's been, we didn't know what sex or anything, that she seems to live with now, he's a really nice guy. And the one she left, everybody has problems with him, and he's a very creepy individual. And we're little kids, and we don't understand what's going on here. And he's going to the meetings. She's disfellowshipped when she does show up. If she shows up, she's got to sit at the back. We're not allowed to talk to her. And it was upsetting. I still talk to her, you know, when I seen her, because I walk by her house a lot where she lived now in our community, and I would talk to her. I didn't care. You know, I was stupid little kid, rebellious, whatever. I got an ass kicking, a lot of ass kickings, you know, whenever my father would find out that I had talked to this disfellowship Jehovah's Witness lady, he would beat the crap out of me. But I didn't give a shit. I liked her. You know, she was a nice lady. And everything I'd learned about her husband and seen with my own eyes by that point, and I had to be around 10 by now, you know, her husband was a bad person. It didn't matter if he was in good standing. Finally, this brother Dave, living in the community where the congregation, the Kingdom Hall was, he ends up molesting one of his neighbor's kids. And the little girl goes back to her father home, and she's crying. She tells her father that this pervert has done this to her. And the father, bless his heart, goes over there, and he beats the ever-loving hell out of him. Almost beat him to death. And, you know, good for him. And he gets arrested. Brother Dave gets arrested. and gets charged with molestation, sexual abuse of a child. And this is his first offense. And this guy's been at it for decades, right? This is his first offense. And he ends up doing, shy of 2 years or something. And I think he's in prison for maybe less than a year and a half. But imagine if he'd been reported, from the beginning, years ago. Everybody knew what was happening, but how they do it, the Jehovah's Witnesses back then were even worse. He's a brother. That's a little girl, right? A child, and a girl child to boot, and nobody witnessed it, right? She's got to have a witness there watching over it. Well, God witnessed everything, and we all knew this guy was a pervert, but nobody does anything. That really angers me. Anytime I see somebody doing something inappropriate, not so much lately, especially when it comes to kids, I can't help but beat the crap out of them. Nobody treats a child bad. I won't put up with that. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah, they'll keep protecting pedophiles. And today they're paying for that. They're really paying for the protecting of these pedophiles. They deserve to pay for it. I'm sorry I'm getting a little angry here. I don't know whatever happened to Brother Dave. I know he's disfellowshipped. Finally, after they lock him up, this guy gets disfellowshipped. But from what I heard a few years after I'd left, he'd been going to a different congregation or something to get reinstated, and I just didn't want to ever hear about this man again. My worldly parents now, I was living with them when I'd heard this. I'd learned a lot from them, a lot of good things. Stu and Juanita were good people, and they were teaching me what was right and wrong. But I wouldn't share a lot of these things that I'd experienced in the faith with them. I'd tell them all kinds of stuff, but I wouldn't tell them stuff that I found uncomfortable, I questioned, and it went against the Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't want to say too much because I was always afraid it was the true faith. Things were a lot different back then. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to the information like we do today. For somebody that's thinking of living or leaving the religion, they can actually start researching it themselves. And the truth comes out a lot quicker today. Back then it was difficult to learn what was right and what was wrong about the Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's pretty clear and easy to do today. The whole point of my videos, that my life story, is hopefully to help somebody else, right? And all I can do is tell you what I remember and how it made me feel. I wish that I had been able to do something back then, but I was a kid and so brainwashed, programmed, I just couldn't say anything. I didn't know how, and I was too scared to do it. Even as a young adult, after leaving the faith, being disassociated, I still couldn't badmouth that religion. Studying with all kinds of different religions myself afterwards, just to discredit them, I still couldn't badmouth. It was that deeply ingrained, programmed into our brains that we don't want to be apostates. And most importantly, we don't say anything against Jehovah or, his organization. It's just so programmed into us. But today, for people leaving, with all this evidence and other brothers and sisters out here, ex-brothers and sisters out here, and even people in there that are on here, helping and talking and telling the truth, the real truth, not that made up stuff from the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves. Real truth. They're here for you, to help you. Don't be scared. Don't let those clowns into your head. Don't let them control who you are. You get right with God yourself. Jesus is our link. It's through him. He's our mediator. We don't need a governing body of a bunch of hypocrites to control us, to control our relationship with our higher power. You know, wake up. Please wake up. Jesus is always there. Let him in. I know you've been brainwashed. I know it's hard to do. But you can do it. I believe in you. I don't want this video to be too long. I just figured I'd do something because if I don't, I won't. Right? I'm a great procrastinator when it comes to things that make me uncomfortable, and this really makes me uncomfortable doing these videos. I know they're pretty raw and probably not all that good, but it's my story, and I have to tell it if it can help somebody else. Thank you for watching it, and know that I love you all. I don't care if you care for me or not. I love you all. And you guys have a good day.